We believe this to be one of the old ferries that operated here in Grifton. This appears to be where the old steam donkey was anchored on the bank. And you can see across the bank there's another clear spot that there was some kind of embankment. What would happen is they would pull the barge back and forth across the creek using the steam donkey, and that's how the crossing was made. There was no bridge at the time. Imagine living in a wilderness and this was the way that you traversed. The creeks and rivers were the highways, and the Tuscarora were here long before Europeans. Hello everybody. I'm here on the old road. This path has been here as long as I can remember. It runs right down beside the creek, right along the creek bed. I'm directly across the creek from where the other side of the ferry landing was, where the steam donkey was mounted to the bank. Now what I'm doing is I'm looking for something on this side of the bank that would anchor the pulley for the steam donkey on this side. I'm not prepared to dig today, so I'm just looking for obvious things. This would be the most direct route to the landing on the other side. And there's a fairly large berm right here. I'm willing to bet that if I come back with a metal detector, that I'll be able to check that berm right there, and I'll probably find the pulley system for the other side of the bank for the ferry. I don't know, that's a guess, but it's a perfect shot across the road there. So let's walk over here and look. Might be better to do this in the fall when there's not as much greenery. Directly behind me, if you peep through the bushes, you'll see the other side of the ferry landing. And I'm pretty sure that this large berm up here is where the pulley system either is buried today or where it was back in the day. All right, so I'm just walking down the path here. It's my understanding that this was the original road, because the writings of the time from the 1700s describe the road as coming directly along the side of the creek, and the ferry landing being there to take people across the creek. So this has got to be it. Let me show you what I'm looking at in front of me. It's a walking trail now. The Tuscarora village of Contentnia would have been not too far from here. The creek was their lifeline. It provided them with transportation and food. The creek is full of fish. And I've got a low ground out on that side over there. There's plenty of wildlife out here too. I found my first yellow fly. Now, for those of y'all that have spent your whole life in the city, these are cypress knees. The cypress tree roots grow up out of the ground. They grow down into the ground and then they grow up out of the ground. So the new road's on the other side of the creek. And you just heard a car go by. But imagine in the 1600s and 1700s, this was the highway. So I'm here along the banks of the Contentnia. As you can see, I'm not far from the public road over there. And this is the dirt I grew up on. This is the creek I grew up with. So in the 1600s, 1500s, just imagine their whole life revolved around this creek. It's pretty amazing. And what's really amazing is that I grew up here and nobody ever bothered to tell me until I got grown and I had to go start researching it for myself. So I'm celebrating the 250th anniversary of my nation, and I'm also thinking back about how my nation was born and what it took to actually form the states. North Carolina in the early 1700s, 1700 to 1710, was not a very established colony. I mean, we had New Bern, which was the capital, which is 30 miles or so that way, down the waterway. And that was pretty much it. There were settlers that had started moving west out of New Bern and settling the area. But this area was occupied heavily by the Tuscarora Native Americans, or the Tuscarora Indians. And they were not nomads. They weren't living in teepees. They actually had houses. And right here where modern day Grifton sits today, there was an Indian village or an Indian town. There are several different pronunciations, but I'm going to use Contentnia because that's what the creek's named. And that's what everything was based on, this one name of this town. It was the headquarters of Chief Hancock, or he's sometimes referred to as King Hancock in the English writings. Now, the interesting thing is that King Hancock wasn't his real name. The Europeans decided he needed a Christian name, so they named him Hancock. I don't know what his real name was. I haven't found it in any writings. If anybody knows what his name was, throw it in the comments or send me a direct message and let me know. I'm going to assume it was Katinga or something similar to Contentnia. I've seen that word a couple of times, and like I said, I'm a country boy from TicBite. I have a tough time pronouncing anything that has more than 2 syllables. So if I butcher any of these words, especially the Native American words, accept my apology in advance because I don't do it intentionally. But they came out of New Bern by boat and came up into the area. John Lawson was a surveyor, a writer, and a historian. He came out and surveyed the land into parcels, and then people got the land, and the Native Americans lost the land. You can describe it ever how you want to, but by our modern laws, it would at least be conversion. But, you know, none of that mattered then because a superior society had encountered a primitive society, and that never goes well. Think about that when you're talking about, everybody's talking about these aliens, and there's a movie out about Disclosure Day and some other stuff. Just think about that. Our society today, as advanced as we are, against a spacefaring race, we would be the Tuscarora or possibly even lower on the food chain. So primitive races have never really survived contact with a more advanced race. So if the alien stories are true and they are coming here, then we're in for a rude awakening. But anyway, back to my story. They sailed up the creek. The Tuscarora captured them and took them to the council in Contentnia, where they decided that John Larson would die for his participation in taking the land from the Tuscarora, and he was executed. The marker in Grifton says about 4 miles north of that location, and I'm about 2 miles north, so 2 more miles that way would be where he was executed at. The Baron was with him, was allowed to leave and return, and he was there to tell the story. And the execution of John Lawson started the Tuscarora War, which lasted 2 years and which nearly ended the North Carolina colony. North Carolina had to call for assistance, not once, but twice, from South Carolina. The first expedition was headed by Colonel Barnwell, who built the fort, which is now the town of Fort Barnwell, which is about halfway between here and New Bern. And the second expedition was headed by Colonel Moore. Colonel Barnwell's expedition ended with basically a stalemate. Hancock remained in control of the Tuscarora and remained in control of the land, and Barnwell went back to South Carolina. Moore came in with a different attitude. He showed up with his army and a significantly larger Native American army, and they came in prepared to do business and do what war does. And about 15 miles that way, the decisive battle was fought in Snow Hill at a fort called Narahuka. I probably pronounced it wrong. Somebody can correct me. But it was a modern fort. It had bastions and tunnels, and it was not a bunch of sticks just stacked up. It was a modern work of architecture. It would probably be a decent fortified fighting position today. I'm not saying up against tanks or whatever, but it'd be a good infantry position. So the war lasted 2 years, and it was fought right here on the dirt where I'm standing. This was the battlefield. There's a place about a half a mile from here that you could walk and just pick up handfuls and bucketfuls of arrowheads when I was a child. It's starting to thunder, and where there's thunder, there's lightning. So I'm about to start walking out. The water remembers. I'm going to take you with me as I walk out. It's hot. I'm about to sweat to death. All right, you're looking at what I'm looking at. What do you think of the road? Do you think I'm right with my theory that this was the original road that was described in the European writing? It follows directly along the creek, and it's been here. You can see it on Google Earth. You can follow it all the way to TicBite on Google Earth. Parts of it aren't passable anymore, but you can still see where the earth is scarred on Google Earth. So I think this was the original road. There would have been another ferry crossing on the Neuse River back behind me there. This heads to the Neuse River. So I'm headed back to the car. I'll let you see some of the creek bank. I think that I'll find along in here, see there's a dip down on that side and there's a dip down on this side. And there's more right here. I think the other side of the ferry, the pulley system that would hoist everything over, I think it's going to be right here within this berm or possibly that berm, but I think it's going to be in this one. It's much taller than the rest of the creek bank, and I think nature overtook it, but I think it's right there. A relic from the 1700s. I'm pretty sure it's right there. So this was the old bridge over the creek. I'm pretty sure this is the old train track. I crossed the new train crossing about 3/4 of a mile back, but I'm pretty sure this is the old train crossing. It's a fairly substantial bridge work here. I'm not going down in there. I don't have on long pants and boots, and I don't want to go visit with a water moccasin. But I will walk to the edge here. Oh, I can see pretty good. You can see the way it's built. You can see the iron pillars that used to hold the bridge. All right, so I'm back into the modern campground that stands here today. When I was growing up, this was a small housing area where people had some shotgun houses that were right up on the creek. They got washed away in the flood just like everything else. Hey, so I'm standing on some dirt that my family sold to the county after the flood the big flood, the flood of the century. So that road that I was just walking on, it would have come out right here in this area. You can see it on Google Maps where the earth is still scarred from it. It came out right here, and it would cross what's now the modern road, and it continued down this little path right here. I don't know if that's the original road or not. I do know that it goes in there about a quarter of a mile, and it turns to the left and goes straight to the Neuse River. So it would be the path that, if I were making a road, that's the way I would have taken it. But it goes back up in there to an area called Jack's Slough. But I am in the big city of TicBite, North Carolina right now. TicBite. I'm not far from Bug Tussle, Skeeter Pond, Dog Patch, Pitch Kettle, Fort Barnville, Grifton, Snow Hill, Tuscarora. A bunch of places are close by. I'm going to leave the live running as I go down the road here just a little ways. Like I said, my family used to own this property. I know that no trespassing sign is on public property because I know where the property line is. So I don't know who put that up, but I know that it's wrong. So I'm just going to let you ride on the dash here a little ways. I'm just going to pull around to another driveway so that I can get back on the property. When I was here last week, I tried to show you the cactus that had pretty much taken over the property, and I did not get a good picture of the cactus at all. So we're going to try that again. And I'm going to pull into the back driveway here and get onto the property. And the property was sold to the county. So this is public property. It's not private property, it's public property. All right, I'm here. I pulled in the back drive. So let's take a look at this property again. Hey there. So this tree behind me here, my mother planted that tree when I was just a little lad. I was not old at all. So let me see if I can show you these cactus. So these cactus right here, they were in the ditch when I was a child growing up and all through my teen years. But they have moved all over the property now. They're everywhere. So when I was growing up, there was a path that headed off into the woods right along in here. And it joined up with that old road. That old road came out where I showed you, back up that way. And then back here in the woods, it made a split. And it came out, I can show you from here. It came out down there in that curve. It came across where the paved road is today. Now, across the paved road here, You see that gap in the trees over there? The old road came up through there. And I was a kid being a kid one day. There were no other houses here. And my family did own the property up to the wood line. But I was a kid being a kid, and I was digging in the old road. And I found an old buggy axle. It was just a piece of iron. I took it to my dad. I said, "What is that?" And he told me. So here's more cactus. They're everywhere. But the old road was right here. You can see the larger trees on either side, and then the brush there in the middle. That's where the old road went through. I can see a squirrel climbing up a tree back there. So, a lot's changed. A lot stayed the same. But I would ride my motorcycle out from there and cross the paved road and go through this little cut through and go across my brother's yard down there and then cut back across and go onto the old dirt road and start riding and playing. And I wore a Honda XR75 out back here on these old roads and never knowing really what they were. It was pretty amazing. So here I am in downtown TicBite. And I'm showing you the big oak tree that was a sapling when my mother planted it years ago. More cactus. And by the way, you don't want to step on them. Especially I've got on water shoes. I don't have the shoes to be messing with cactus. But more cactus. There's the remnants of some flowers that my mother planted. She bought these flower bulbs from the back of a magazine. And I remember when they came, she was so excited. And she came out and made a little flower bed around this tree with those bulbs. I wonder if any of them are still growing out here. Wow, this tree's big. I'm looking for copperheads. This tree is big, big, big. I don't see any off the top of my head, but they might be in there. You notice the trees? What kind of tree is that? There's some pines. Dad always said that you could really tell when you had some really poor land. If it grew scrub oak and longleaf pine, it was trash. Well, here we are, right? More cactus. They love it here. There's not even a sign of the foundation where the house was. There's nothing. There was a large concrete porch that was screened in that ran all across here. And the house stood right here. But nothing remains. I mean, nothing. Had a detached garage that sat back over here. And nothing remains. Now there's a possibility that was mine. And there's a possibility it wasn't because of the flood and stuff, but it's in the right place for it to have been mine. It's old, I know that. Still got air in it. I'm gonna leave it here. But this is TicBite, folks. And I didn't know at the time I was living here and the time I was digging axe heads and arrowheads and buggy axles and stuff out of the ground that I was standing on top of history, and that one of the biggest decisive wars in the founding of the United States was fought right here. But you know, the things they keep from you in history books. There's some of my mom's plantings that have survived. This is the land I grew up on. This is TicBite. It's covered in cactus now. There are a few scattered homes here and there. A few people still live here, but not many. Most people have left, and there's good reason why. But this once was a thriving neighborhood, and now it's just the wilderness is reclaiming it. And it's done it fairly quickly. It's been reclaimed fairly quickly. I didn't know as a child that I was standing on a battlefield where the future of the United States, or at least the North Carolina colony, was going to be decided. And that this land once was occupied by the Tuscarora Native Americans, where they hunted and fished and trapped. Now the Contentnia Creek is right back there. And on the other side over here, this way, is the Neuse River. So where I was just at the boat ramp and the old ferry crossing, is almost straight back through here. And the old road that circled around and went back would go down this way, well past where the state maintenance ends and where the pavement ends, all the way back to the Neuse River. And I've been all over that area when I was a child. And there were earthworks back there where I didn't recognize them at the time, but they could have been fighting positions for soldiers. They could have been where they dug a ditch. They could have been a lot of things. But there's a lot of history back there in these woods. A lot of history. And they're digging it up one truckload at a time and hauling it away. I can see the sand mine through the trees right here. I don't know if you could see it a minute ago when I had the camera pointed that way, but I'm going to show you. If you look straight through the trees, the yellow that you're seeing there is actually the piles of sand from the sand mine. So just come along with me as we drive just a little ways.
Start recording video.
Yeah. Well, that's my dash camera, by the way. If you don't have a dash camera, get one. Get one. That camera recorded what almost was the end of my life when I was hit head on by a reckless driver. It nearly killed me. Well, it did stop my heart for about 15 minutes. And I got to meet a being that I can only describe as an angel. It was an awesome experience. And if anybody has an experience like that and they come away saying that they don't believe in God, they got some serious, serious problems. And we're going to get a twofer here. because the old road and the sand mine. So we get a 2 for 1. There's Grifton sand and gravel. This was not here. As a matter of fact, my brother's house stood right there. But there's a water meter right here in the woods somewhere that we paid to have put in. That was a big deal. But I'm not going into the sand mine. But you can see the sand stacked up back there for huge piles of sand. And from what they told me, they're actually getting this crush and run gravel out of there too. I had no idea that that would be back there, but they're getting that as well. Now the old road ran through here. A friend of mine still lives there. And there's an old house back here. You see the gap in the trees back there? That's the old road. There's a gate across it now. There was no gate back when I was a kid. And the owner didn't mind us going back there as long as we didn't mess it up. I don't see the old house. It may have been torn down, I don't know. And you can tell this is wetland. See the reeds and stuff? Imagine trying to survive in this. I'm about to burn slam up right now. I'm sweating like crazy. Just imagine this being all you had. I'm looking for the old house and I don't see it. They're coming up empty. I don't see the old house. But in my lifetime, the woods reclaimed it. And then it was exposed again because of some logging. And evidently the woods have reclaimed it again. Or maybe it's been torn down. And I just got a raindrop on my face. I think it's about time to hit the car. But I spent many happy days riding my dirt bike down this little path right here. This old dirt road that's now just gone. Floods ruin things, you know? They really do. And we'll take a ride to the end of TicBite Road. Chris's dad was named Kirby. And Mr. Kirby had a house here. Mr. Kirby worked on cars. He was probably the best mechanic in the area. He could fix stuff. He loved Toyotas too. Really loved Toyotas. He could fix stuff. Man, that man was a whiz. He was a mechanical whiz. And I've always liked mechanical stuff. So I'd go down and hang out and watch him and learn some things. So before I was 10 years old, I knew how to take a motor apart, and I knew how to strike an arc and actually run a welding bead. Compare that with what 10-year-olds are doing today. Kind of sad. So if you're just joining the stream, we're driving to the end of TicBite Road right this second. I've gone down the old road in Grifton by the old ferry. I've walked down what I believe to be the original Contentnia path or road. And now I'm driving through flooded TicBite. And you can see some people decided to stay, but most people left. It's pretty much one big disaster area still. So there's another mine that's down here. We're coming up on the old boat store. Everything looks so different now. It looks a lot smaller too. Things used to be so big and now they're so little. So this is where the state maintenance ends. I had friends that lived all along in here. Most of their houses are gone. But used to, you could drive down past where that gate is and turn around. And sometimes people would pull down there and park their car for whatever reason that they might choose to do that. But I drove a school bus in high school, and I drove the school bus back in that little circle and turned it around. So it went onto that road and did a turnaround. So this is the end. This is all the TicBite here. And the creek is right there. You see where the trees end in the shot? That's where the creek is. We'd spend many evenings down here on the creek fishing. And this is the site of the old boat store. And matter of fact, there's the old boat store right there. Can you see it? You see the old boat? That is the boat store. So it survived the flood. It didn't float away when the flood happened. Says a lot about the boat, right? So, but that's all TicBite, folks. The place is full of game. Somebody has spray painted the trees blue or purple. I guess they're trying to mark the property as no trespassing, but hate to break it to you, bud, that's public property. It ain't yours. And I know it's public property because we owned it and we sold it to the county. So you can put some purple paint on it, but it ain't yours. So this sign right here in the curve is what I want to bring your attention to. 1,700 acres for sale.